Force construction for Heroclix can be a daunting task. Whether you're playing a few fun games over your kitchen table with friends, having some laughs in a 2-booster sealed match at your local game store, or making an honest attempt at the World Championship, it all begins with putting together a force for you to pilot. Some players accept their fate, and others have people build their forces for them, but not you. You clicked on this video because you have what it takes to make a good team. A great team. The best team there ever was or will be. You just don't quite know how. Good thing you came to the right place. Welcome to the first short video essay in a series of projects to help you become the best Heroclix player you can be. Together, we will start with the fundamentals of team building. For many of you who have been playing Heroclix for a long time, much of this information may be old news. You may have a good head about your shoulders regarding force construction. Maybe even won a few events in your time. No matter what your situation is, there's always something to learn. So sit back, relax, and take a deep dive with me into the core tenets of building a Heroclix force. Disclaimer. I am not being paid to make this video. There are no sponsors. I have not been asked to promote anybody or any works or achievements of others. Any reference or praise given to players or other works is purely due to my appreciation of them and what they offer the community. This video is going to make some minor assumptions about your Heroclix knowledge. I'm going to assume you know what Heroclix is, that you have played the game before, and have a general understanding of its core rules and functions. I am also assuming you understand some of the shorthand vernacular and have had experience in conversing about Heroclix with others in some capacity. Understanding the right tools. All good projects start with the proper tools. It can take a very long time to build a table with a spoon, and it takes a long time to get to England in a rowboat. When building a force for Heroclix, there is no finer tool than HCUnits.net. Link in the description below. HCUnits is the premier location for everything Heroclix team related. There is a fully fledged out unit section, tournament reports, meta breakdowns, trade wants and haves, and a feature that supports your entire Heroclix inventory. You will not find a finer website concerning Heroclix. When building your Heroclix team, utilizing the search features of HCUnits will enable a quick and accurate method for locating the figures that fill out the gaps and cover the weak points of your build. Once you have your collection added to the database, you can even choose to show the figures you own, making it much easier to weed out anything you do not have access to. HCUnits is truly a modern marvel of Heroclix team building, and there is so much to go over concerning the website, which is why I will be releasing a separate video giving a full rundown of all the features available, so stay tuned for that. The big 3, 5, 6? Ever since I started playing Heroclix in 2013, people have had different names and ideologies for what is most important when building a Heroclix force. Historically, it's always been called the Big 3. Perplex, Probability Control, or Prob for short, and Outwit. If you had access to all three of these powers at any given time, you were guaranteed to have a more well-rounded experience than players who did not. After a few rules changes back in 2016, I started to adopt a slight change in my own philosophy called the Big 5. Keeping the Big 3 around, the Big 5 included assistance from leadership and telekinesis, or TK for short. Changes to leadership launched it into one of the strongest powers in the game, and the reach that TK provides is too important once your builds start to become competitive in nature. Finally, in 2023, changes were made to terrain in general. Players could start with terrain that impacted the game state on their force for 0 points, and characters could start to interact with that terrain in new and exciting ways. This is where the 6th member of the team comes from, and why I'm officially updating the name to the Big 6. Super Strength is a game-changing power that is invaluable to a well-built team. If for any reason you do not have the ability to put Super Strength in your force, at a bare minimum you need to have a good way to deal with opposing barrier and other terrain. Without it, you will get outmaneuvered and lose all of your available tempo. When looking for figures with these powers, don't fall into a linear path, only choosing characters with access to one of these powers at a time. Instead, look for characters that can use multiples of these powers, at least 2, but sometimes even 3 or 4. A few good examples of this would be Avengers 60th, Ultra Chase, Mephisto, or the new white shirt Scott Porter, equipped with a Sinestro Corps ring. This will allow you to have a more tightly knit force and gives way to building with higher costed figures with extra breathing room. Rule number 1 of building a Heroclix force for dummies. Have at least one of each of the big 6, and regardless of how the rest of your team is built, you will guaranteed have a well-rounded experience. The metagame. Heroclix is an ever-evolving tapestry of color, landscape, and flair. The game you play right now will not be the same game you play 3 years into the future, and it's certainly not the same game as it was 3 years ago. It is because of this reason that this video remains intentionally vague on the core tenets of team building. The game changes, figures change, players change, we all just changed, and while core values and tenets remain the same, their scope varies from year to year. It is important to maintain a watchful eye on what is being built, where it's being played, and who is playing it. These factors can vastly change the landscape of your gameplay experience. Paying attention to the meta breakdown on HCUnits, listening to a large catalog of Heroclix podcasts and YouTube videos, and reading articles published online will all assist you in painting that broad picture of what the current metagame is and what makes it tick. Are things ranged or close combat based right now? Are people trending towards aggro gameplay or defensive gameplay? Is there an abundance of rollouts or high defense values? What tools are available to mitigate difficult game state positions? These are all elements you should be keeping a watchful eye on when investigating your metagame. Remember, as you change geographical areas, go to larger events, or play with different people, the metagame changes. There is no skeleton key for Heroclix, and one build does not rule them all. You will need to adapt and overcome to the challenges of Heroclix team building to prove your mettle in the field of battle. So how do we do that? Step 1. Choose a figure, archetype, or idea. The best Heroclix builds always start with a single figure. It is typically a figure the pilot would like to play, whether because they feel that the figure is the best chance they have at glory, or just because they like how the character plays, or maybe even the character in general. It always begins with figure number 1. Many players may choose to start with their prime, defensive cornerstone, or primary support piece. I personally start with the team's primary attacker. Being an aggressive player at heart, how I am dealing damage is the most important question on my mind. Once I have the main focus of the build in place, I can start piecemealing the rest of the force together. Step 2. Theme or non-theme? Some players may prioritize this step differently, but is usually a question I am asking myself almost immediately. Depending on the status of the meta, current theme teams may be more potent than theme teams that came before. In the past, theme teams had a bonus to their map roll and access to theme team probability control, but the trade-off was trying to find figures that worked around the desired keywords. Non-themes only received some of these bonuses, but were not limited to any specific characters or keyword. Recently, this gap has been bridged out a lot, and theme teams do not receive as many bumps as they used to, but figures have also gotten much cheaper overall, and many desired keywords are being printed on more characters than ever before. The line has gotten a bit gray as of late, but it is still up to the team builder to decide what path they would like to walk down. Step 3. Ensuring you have the big 6. As mentioned before, the big 6 are vital to the success of a Heroclix team. As your skills progress and you have an easier go of Heroclix competition, you may find you are able to get away with not having proper access to each of these powers at all times, and that is perfectly okay. For the purposes of newer team building, we want to make sure we have the most well-rounded team possible. I find this to be the best jumping off point when building a team for yourself. Keep in mind that you don't have to necessarily have all of these powers on dial at the start of the game. Having access to sideline active characters or equipment that can grant these powers is perfectly acceptable and a rather efficient way of team building. You will see an example of this when we build our team at the end of the video. Step 4. Equipment and additional game elements. This video focuses on game elements that are modern age legal at the time of production, But it is important to note that depending on the format for your event, there are many additional game elements that can be utilized for play. Leave a comment down below should you be interested in videos breaking down these elements in more detail. In 2024, the main additional game elements that players have access to are equipment, terrain, and sideline active characters. If there is a particular piece of equipment that you feel would benefit your primary figures, it is important to try and add it early, so you do not get blindsided when your point total reaches its goal prematurely. It is also important to ensure that you do not go overboard with additional game elements, as they can bog down your force and take away from additional characters that may have been able to benefit you better in the end. Step 5. Maps. A good map is just as important as a main force Heroclix team. Maps can make or break tournaments and players due to their high levels of preparation or lack thereof. If you are unsure of what maps to start with, I always go by this rule. Add at least one large map and one small map, at least one indoor blocking, and at least one open. If you have a combination of these for your 3 available map choices, things will turn out just fine. Step 6. Tarot cards. While they are also considered an additional game element, I wanted to give tarot their own section, as it's a little bit more nuanced than standard equipment or terrain. Until rotation happens at the end of 2024, tarot cards are still a major meta staple and will continue to be for both Silver and Golden Age games after they rotate out of Modern. There are many different philosophies when building a tarot deck, but the one I have come to adopt personally is this. Keep your deck limited to 5 cards if possible, and never go higher than 6. Always build low risk and low reward, as high risk or high reward cards will always end up biting you in the end at some point. It is much more beneficial to use a burner card that does not impact the game state for either player, instead of trying to use a card like the Tower, which will almost always certainly cause more harm than good. Do your best to use tarot cards that help your team in small ways, rather than trying to use big cards that ruin your tempo advantage. If you stick to these core tenets of tarot, no matter what cards you choose, it will work out just fine. An example team. Now that we've gone over some general tenets for building a good Heroclix team, let's finally take a moment and look at a force that I have put together that covers all of the bases and then some. For context, my local meta typically focuses on an aggressive, in-your-face playstyle, so this team is built to combat that as efficiently as possible. A link to this public team can be found in the description down below. I decided the starting point for this build would be Prime Doc Sasquatch from Wheels of Vengeance. His trait, the Green Door, makes him potentially difficult for an opponent to put down, ensuring that he needs to be KO'd at minimum 2 times, but upwards of 6 or even 7 if you roll well enough. The Hell Cycle equipment on him provides the move and attack he so sorely needs. He also covers 3 of the big 6 on his own, with access to Traded Perplex, Outwit on Dial, and Full Dial Super Strength. For Step 2, I elected to make this a theme team, and what better way to do that than keyword shenanigans with Genesis and Apocalypse. Genesis makes all monster, brute, and warrior keyworded figures into Araco, and Apocalypse grants Araco the X-Men keyword, making this an X-Men theme team. Black Shirt Scott Porter chooses Araco to avoid any issues with characters keying off of monster keyword on him. Both APOC and Genesis have full dial leadership at their 35-point line, so that only leaves 2 more powers for the big 6. Once theme was established, I immediately started considering what other attackers I was looking to have. In today's metagame, the answer was obvious, and Carnage Silver Surfer was chosen. I elected to give him the avatar Khonshu for access to stealth and prob, and also ensuring he's not equipped so the team can handle matchups with King Killmonger. Khonshu also checked off the second to last box of the big 6 with access to probability control. For the final 75 points, I elected to go with the most well-rounded approach I could think of. I utilized both white and black shirt Scott Porter figures, and Daredevil at 20 points. The remaining 5 points are for the nifty Traffic Barrel, which Daredevil can pick up and turn off improved movement to opposing characters within 4 squares of himself. The Scott Porter duo provides the team a static +1 attack at all times, and also a +1 defense when characters are adjacent to each other as long as they share a keyword. It also provides the team with an additional access to probability control and 2 perplexes, one of which is thanks to the Sinestro Core ring on the white shirt Scott Porter. Black shirt Porter having access to his counting on the community trait ensures that he has good control board wide for re-rolling any roll up to 3 times per game. He also checks off the final box of the Big Six, giving the team access to telekinesis. For the sideline, there wasn't too many characters that could have been chosen. I have Khonshu as mentioned previously, and then Scrappy Doo and War Machine both will key off of white shirt Scott Porter's keywords. Characters like Chthon do not make a lot of sense on this team without a more reliable way to heal after turn 1. For my terrain, the first slot is being used by the nifty traffic barrel, so we only have slots 2 and 3 remaining. I elected to go with the L-shaped blocking terrain markers, otherwise known as the Machine, to grant a safe approach against my opponents, as my reach isn't quite as far as I typically would like. Next we move on to our maps. I'm a big believer in the Morlock Tunnels and Otherworld Castle, so I typically have both maps on nearly all of my builds. The third map can be whatever a player wants, but I decided that the Daily Bugle Press Room would be the best fit for this squad, as it is a primarily close combat oriented team. Last but not least, we move on to our tarot cards. I elect to leave tarot as the last thing I build with for any team, because we don't really know which cards will benefit and which ones will harm our force until our force is completed. For our major arcana, I elected to go with one of my favorite cards, the Hanged Man. Since we are playing Blackshirt Scott Porter, we can take the unavoidable damage on any character we want and immediately heal it back up on the same turn. This paired with Doc Sasquatch's Perplex power means we can give any character other than Doc Sasquatch +2 to combat values for a turn. This can turn characters like Carnage Silver Surfer into an absolute monster. The other benefit is the opponent cannot heal the damage taken right away, so one of their characters is going to be 1 click down should they elect to have the +1 combat values for themselves. The best part about this card, it's completely optional, so if taking the damage and getting the +1s doesn't make sense for the turn, then don't do it. For our Cups card, I decided to go with the Knight, as I have a lot of access to invulnerability, and reducing by 3 makes it even more difficult to chew through some of these dials. Up next is the Ten of Pentacles, as I have 3 characters with access to hypersonic speed, and keeping tokens off of characters is always a wise choice. For my Swords card, I always love choosing the ace when playing Genesis and APOC. Blades Claws Fangs isn't a super commonly used power, so giving an extra bump to my Blades rolls without having to worry about my opponents is very nice. Lastly, we move on to the Wands. Because of the sheer number of single D6 rolls I have access to, I elected to go with the Queen. This may be a bit much in practice versus some teams, but overall, I like the tempo it provides me. And there we have it, a fully built Heroclix force. Now that force construction is complete, the only remaining thing to do is to play. Practice makes perfect, and I always recommend the scientific method when testing to ensure you're giving everything the benefit of the doubt in the end. Get as many games in as possible when you're preparing for an event, and remember, it's just a game. Feel free to make changes to this team. What works for me might not necessarily work for you. It's important to get a good feel for the characters you are playing with, and sometimes you may not have access to something, or it may not just feel right when you try and put it on a map. Or maybe even, it doesn't work well for your local meta. These things are all perfectly okay, and you can make changes as necessary. Thanks for watching my video. This is the first one I've put on this channel, so I hope you like it. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, or send me a message. I'm thinking I want to make videos about what the community is looking for, so any advice or ideas are always appreciated. Thanks a ton, and have a nice day.